Hello.
Hello.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Nathan.
Terry, I think this is the first panel I've ever done with you.
Really?
Without everybody with us?
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Is this like history
don't
in the
tell
making
anyone.
right here?
History.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow. I gotta say,
Look,
I gotta.
I was thinking you weren't sitting next to me, but it's a table. Never mind.
Did you get a little upset there for a minute?
I did. I was a little offended. Like, wow, we have to have space.
I'm not going to sit next to you.
I gotta say right off the very bat, Deep Space Nine, my absolute favorite Star Trek series of all time, still to this day.
Thank you. Oh my God, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take that, right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
anytime.
my goodness.
Especially after, the last 20 years where people never watched this at all. So
I think it's got a little bit of a cult following now. Like I feel like it starts to gain steam as the years go on. People
took long enough.
But people are
He's bitter. I'm not.
I do have to say,
But he's Quark and I'm Dax, so that makes sense, right? Yeah.
no offense, Terry, but
Right.
Quark is my all-time favorite Star Trek character ever. Quark, and this is no joke. Quark got me into Star Trek. I happened to randomly catch an episode of Deep Space Nine. I'm like, who is this character and why is he so greedy? And then I started watching and I absolutely fell in love with it. So you are the reason right there that I got into Star Trek because of your character.
Thank you. And I got into Star Trek because of Terry. I followed her anywhere.
Well, wait, weren't you on Next Gen?
I was, yes. I
see.
was on. I screwed up the Ferengi really badly on Next Generation, and 7 years of Deep Space Nine was my attempt to try to erase that performance away from people's memories. It's the truth.
They record it, though.
Did they?
Yeah.
That was in the old days.
The Ferengi were really different in Next Generation, though,
Oh, they were horrible.
right?
They were horrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, was your makeup different?
Yeah, it was different, but my behavior, the acting was atrocious.
Oh.
Oh my God, I was
I've done
horrible.
things like
They were like-
that. Not on Star Trek,
Yeah,
but yeah.
you
I've
never
done other
wanna see
things that
them
I'm like,
again.
ooh, I'd like to erase that.
They gave them more of like a caveman approach.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a classical actor, so there's a little bit of the Richard III and Letek. Oh, it was horrible. Oh my
Like,
God,
he
it was
can't
horrible.
stop himself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was just a documentary about Deep Space Nine
Yes.
recently, and how did that feel to have a documentary about Deep Space Nine after all these years and to see the appreciation for it? Because you said you felt like it took a while to get that appreciation.
Go ahead, Terry.
Well, I don't. You know what? I think that's more for you.
Yeah,
'cause
okay,
I
I'll
think
take it.
you're the one who has this thing. Yeah, the
Okay.
Richard the Third
All right,
hump
yes.
on your back about it.
It was lovely to see all my friends. That was really good. We talked for a long period of time. The attempt, I think, was to rejuvenate is not the right word, but to put new blood into it, and it was a surprise when I watched it for the first time to hear that the writers had conceived of an 8th season, and it was a surprise to our good friend Aaron Eisenberg, who they told us had been killed off in the episode. And just let me say this, I'm sure we both feel this way. We want to give a shout out to Aaron, who passed away in October. But it was lovely. A lot of people watched it, come and talk to us about it. And when I listened to the documentary, watched the documentary, I heard stories that I was not familiar with. So I thought I knew everything about Deep Space Nine. And so it was nice to hear what other people, including you, had to say about the show.
I wish I could have said more about how much I loved being on the show and playing the character, but most of it was about why I was gone and all of that.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't room for me to show how much
Yeah.
it meant to me and the gratitude I have for having Dax be part of who I am now. And she was so amazing, and she helps me be stronger. I know that sounds kind of weird. Not like I have another personality. It's just that those parts of yourself kind of
Yeah.
enhanced. You discover them.
No, exactly.
And I will tell you something that's not in the documentary. When Terry Farrell worked on the set, it was a good day. It was.
Thank you, Armin.
And that's not
like
because
working with you too.
that's not
I
because you're
did.
here. Thank you. No. But really, Terry brought so much fun to the set every time that I worked with her that it was really a good day. And I'm actually quite upset with the powers that be that they never allowed me to have more of a relationship with you.
I know, yeah. Well, he appreciates my high energy. Some people don't, or some people didn't.
I always thought that was joyful.
I'm an
And
Energizer bunny.
Absolutely. And we always knew where you were at.
Yeah.
You're very good about letting us all know where you're at.
That's true. I'm so sorry.
Someone's got to play that role, right? Yeah.
A TMI person, yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. So first one, go ahead.
Hi, my question is for you, Terry. What was your first reaction when they told you that Jadzia was going to get killed off?
Really wanted to be, if anything, to be reoccurring. But I would say if you say to someone, it's take it or leave it, you better be sure you're okay with them leaving it. So I had a long time to think about it. It was probably a year after I was told it was a take it or leave it offer that I found out I was going to die. So it was a little bit in the making the whole way of me saying, if we can't have a conversation, I have to very respectfully say, no, thank you. You know, I saved my feelings about it for my parents to hear about, or, you know, friends that weren't on the set. So it was really overall very frustrating and sad. I felt like I wasn't important enough for them to even just have me be reoccurring or to even have a discussion of a renegotiation. I feel like it's important, especially being a woman and representing other women, other actresses, that our voice is not heard very often, and especially in a situation where you work for someone who's, he was not respectful of me, and I know that if I was a man, he would have treated me very differently. So all around, it felt like I have to stand for this. So he wanted to fight that, and I had to, you know, I was put in the position that I just had to say no, thank you. So yeah, it was painful. I didn't get what I wanted, but I was standing up for something that I thought was more important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you're here now, and we all appreciate you.
Thank
so.
you. But so when people say, you know, what do I think about Nicole? I didn't watch the last season because I didn't want to be replaced. I mean, nobody likes to feel like they're replaceable. But I was replaced there, and then I was replaced on Becker. So, geez, you know, I've been divorced. Fuck, I'm replaceable. Eventually, I'll die. I'm replaceable.
Not in our hearts, Terry. Not in our hearts.
You weren't replaced. It was just a different character.
Yeah.
That's it. No replaced.
Hi, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
I was hoping each of you could maybe just share any nice memories you have of working with Aaron Eisenberg, and because especially both of your characters, Terry, Dax kind of had the friendlier relationship with the Ferengi than any other cast members, and of course Quark being Nog's uncle. If you could just share some nice memories of what it was like to work with him.
That'd be nice.
I'll start because you just got done. Aaron
Those
was,
are the rules.
Those are the. See, you know exactly where she's at. Aaron was there in the first episode, and he had actually quite a lot to do. Aaron was always a joy. He was always frustrated that he wasn't given more to do on the show. But I would venture to say that none of our characters, not yours, not mine, not anybody else, had as much of a character arc as Nog did. Aaron, who had always suffered from kidney disease, had more life than 12 Ferengi. And he was a joy to be around. He was always making us laugh. It was a great shock to all of us when he passed away. And he leaves behind him 2 wonderful children, and an ex-wife and a present wife. It was a great surprise and blessing to find out that he and Melissa had gotten married 6 months before he passed away. So that was really nice. I miss him dearly. He was a good friend. There are very few like him.
Thank you.
Yeah. He and I would sort of spar, verbally spar with each other. And so when I first started, though, I thought, oh, my word, this guy is so irritating. And I think he felt the same way about me, too. In the beginning.
Maybe in the beginning.
In the beginning. And then it just, I don't know, that's just, you know, how some people you become friends because you don't like each other to begin with. And it was like we were the long and the short of it, because I'm 6 feet tall. And so we were both vertically challenged in our own ways. And I don't know how or when it became a bond, but I think, and this was said at his memorial, Aaron lived his life out loud. None of us got a different version of Aaron. And he was just the epitome of living an authentic life. He would apologize for what he said, but not for what he believed in. So if he hurt your feelings or said it in a way that it was offensive, he would apologize and try to get you to understand where he was coming from. But it was great because you never felt like he was just acquiescing to the group. Like, everyone thinks that, so I'm going to go along with them. He would not be he was fearless. He would just say what he was thinking, or what was going on with him. And with him, too, you just always knew what was going on with him. And the last time I got to work with him was on a fan show called Renegades. It was supposed to be Star Trek Renegades, but then, of course, they put the kibosh on that, changed all our characters the night before we're filming. But Aaron got to play this badass character, and he looked really freaking cool. He had cool makeup. He looked, you know, kind of devilish. And it was really exciting for him, and he did a really, really good job. And we worked with Walter, too, and I can't remember what happened. We were all rehearsing lines, and he interrupted Walter or in some way directed him or something, and Walter was not having any of it. And then, of course, I think it was like 48 hours of Aaron apologizing because he felt so bad. But it's funny, the little things we all have happen. And I felt my heart break for him because I knew he didn't mean to. Just put his foot in his mouth kind of thing. But it's just so shocking, you know. He was 50, and I didn't know that he was that much younger than me. I thought we were closer in age. It's just so hard. And poor Melissa, who only had 6 months being married to him, she just every day tweets something, and it's so heartbreaking. And I'm just newly married, so I think, oh my God, you can't help but have it reflect your own life. And I love you, Armin. I love you.
I'm very sorry for both of your loss. Thank you.
Yeah.
We can feel the love in the room, and that's
Yeah.
that's great. And Star Trek brings us together, I think, in that way, and that's fantastic. So,
Star Trek
You're
family
right,
is
Nathan.
very close, actually, very close.
and that's great
It's
to hear.
because of conventions, I think, more than anything.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
Well, I think Star Trek kind of molded the convention scene. It really did. I mean, I
It's
think,
like symbiotic.
Yeah.
It all works together. Yeah. Because we get to know each other and other actors. You know, so there were things I'd say yes to just because I knew Armin and Renee were going to be there, or whoever. It was like, is there somebody else from my show going? And that I want to go.
And that's great to hear that you are excited to see the people that you worked with. And I think as fans, that's great to see that, you know, you love each other and that you care about each other, because that makes the relationships on screen even that stronger.
Right. Well, and then you understand too, because you love it. Some people you don't love that you work with, but there are people that you really feel like a familial bond with when you work with them over 12 hours a day. You start to, you know everything about what's going on in their life.
They legit become family. I mean, yeah. Sure. Go to the next question.
Yes. So this is a question for Terry, and it's one of the for the panel nerd questions. What happens to Trill and Stovercore? Jadzia is there, but is Dax going? If one of the other Trill who was a symbiote with Dax go, like Curzon or Ezri, who gets Dax?
Ezra has Dax, and I'm in Stovacore, I guess. That would
Yeah.
be how that works, right?
Right.
But if
Sounds
Dax
good,
goes,
though, right?
But
Well, Ezra does have Dax.
But if Dax goes to Stovercore, who gets Dax then?
Well, then Dax wouldn't be in Stovacore. Even though they called me Dax, all the scripts said Dax. So when people,
Okay.
that's what I signed Dax because that's what I read when I did. You know, it's funny because it's my first name, but it's like Cisco.
Yes.
In the script, it only said Cisco, right? So that's kind of funny to me. But no, the worm is like a whole nother. I don't know how long that thing's gonna live, but I want to get it back.
Okay, that was the question.
So
I'm just saying. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking just because now I am part of the Nimoy family. Yes. When my father-in-law died, before he knew that I was his daughter-in-law, I'm sure he would have held on longer if he knew that was coming. But he died in the movies, right? And he came right back. Was there an explanation? Fuck no. He just showed up. So like that, I think I should just show up,
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you guys like that?
right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No explanation needed.
Who cares? Why? We all love it. We don't need an explanation.
No, no one cares anymore.
Exactly,
It's-
right?
yeah, it's been
They
too
just-
long.
They just want to see the characters they
It's
love.
been 20 years. Here she is. All right.
All right. We'll deal with it.
Hi to both of you. I saw the Fifth Rule podcast, and after Aaron had passed away, Armin, and what you said was so moving. Like, I literally was in my living room crying. Of course, we don't know him, but just hearing how much you guys loved him and knew him, and when you were saying about he wanted to be a great actor and be remembered as that, I know everybody else can attest to that we thought he was a great actor. You know.
The problem is Aaron didn't know that.
Right.
Aaron always thought he could do better, and I kept saying to him, "You're doing great. You're doing fine," and he just didn't. All actors have a little bit of that, but I think Aaron had a lot of that, and to hear you say that is making him happy in heaven. So thank you for that, because he was always concerned that he just wasn't good enough, which is probably why he apologized as much as he did. So.
What is your favorite episode which your character was featured, both of you guys?
Do you remember when we played with Wally Shawn? And we had that, what was the card game? And we were making it up as we were doing it.
Tango?
Tongo.
Thank you.
Thank you. And did we rehearse
Tongo.
at your house?
We might have. Yeah, I did a lot of
There were
rehearsal in my house.
A couple of times I
so
got
yeah.
to go rehearse at his house on a Sunday before we worked, which was kind of rare for me, actually, because I get like zero turnaround. So, well, you did too.
Yeah, but a lot of people, especially the Ferengi, would come to my house on the weekends, and we would rehearse.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah.
It's because we had this makeup to wear. You're aware that we wore makeup, Ferengi.
Yeah.
And about the 10th hour, our day, the Ferengi, perhaps the Trills as well, but the Ferengi days were probably about 16 to 17 hours of day. That's including the makeup process. So about hour 10, anyone encased in that rubber, we just failed. At around hour 10, it was like having a head cold. We couldn't think straight. So we would rehearse at my house in order to be ahead of the curve, so that we would have the lines down, we would know what the other people were doing. We would have a handle on what the work was. So we invited you that day because we were playing tango.
It was so much fun. So much fun. I loved working with you. And I love his wife, Kitty. She's amazing.
She is, isn't she?
Yeah. And you guys introduced me to my kickboxing trainer, Brian Shires,
yeah.
because you guys went there.
Yeah.
So then we had that in common. And then I would go have breakfast with Kitty. And we never ended up working out together. We kept saying we were going to. So clearly.
I don't know about you, but Kitty is a hell of a boxer, so
Is
thanks to
she?
Brian, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was sick. You'd have to work out to get in shape to do the kickboxing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When Kitty
was no joke.
When Kitty was taking to boxing, I said, "You want this marriage to last? Leave the gloves in the car. Leave the gloves in the
You
car."
start wanting to kick shit, like everywhere. Like, it is so much fun, right? When 9/11 happened, I could kick the top of the bag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
I
Gary.
could. My ass looked so good then. It did.
Thank you.
38, I was, whoo. That was a while ago now.
Thank you both so much for joining us. But I had a question for Armin, and it dawned on me as you were mentioning character arcs and how you felt maybe that you didn't get the character arc that you wanted. I always thought that the ending of Deep Space Nine with Quark sort of becoming a idealized version of Ferengi and what he thought the Ferengi should be on Deep Space Nine was an interesting place for his character to end up. But at the same time, was there a character arc that you wanted as an actor for Quark?
Well, I'll be frank with you. I've said this before. It's not because Terry's sitting here. I always wanted to have a relationship with Dax. So that's a character arc that never fulfilled. I don't know how she ended up with Michael. Who would want to be with Michael?
It's true, actually, yeah. Well, if you think about that too hard, it doesn't work.
So that's an arc that never happened. Aside from that, I think that writers did a phenomenally good job. And speaking of the last episode, I had complained to the writers that everybody else is matriculating. Everybody else's arc is huge. And I'm just still the bartender, and nothing has really happened to me. And then when I did the second to the last episode, and they were sort of saying, you're reverting back to the Quark you were in the first episodes, I realized how far I had come. So that was my mistake. They had indeed given me an arc. I just wasn't aware of it. That's all.
Thank you.
Harder to see when you have your own evolution happening.
Do you think a Quark spinoff would have worked?
They thought about that.
Yeah, was
Really?
it Quark's Bar?
Yeah.
What kind of
There was, I just found this out 6 months ago.
A half-hour comedy, how about that?
Yeah. Somebody who was high up in the hierarchy said that they had pitched a Quark show, and this was 6 months ago. You can imagine how surprised I was. I went, really? And but the idea, I mean, it was hard enough wearing the makeup, 2 days a week at the most, except on the big Ferengi episodes. But to wear it every day, I'm too old for that, I think.
If asked, would you?
If I was to come back on let's say Picard or a movie or something like that, where I only had to do it for
A short period of
short
time.
period of time, yes, of course I would do that. But anything where I would have to do it continually, they would have to pay me a ton of money, and pay
You
for.
already own your house, right?
Yes, I do. And my life insurance. Yeah, it would be a very hard choice. It would be an enormously hard choice if they said to me we were going to do that. As much as I enjoyed the character, and I really did, the makeup was taxing, and I don't know if I could. At my age, I don't think I could face that really.
I could wear my makeup again.
I was about to
Yeah.
ask.
Do you know that all of her makeups were numbered? Every time she put the makeup on, the makeup artist, who was the designer of all the makeups, would number at the very bottom of the dots. There's a number there.
I asked him to autograph it because he was painting it by hand, and I said, that's art. And he was like, it sure is. So he started doing Roman numerals, and he's Mike Westmore. That's kind of a long name, but yeah.
So Terry, would you be willing to jump back into?
As long as I'm not a Ferengi, yeah.
That's why I love her. She is incredible.
I think I should come back like as a Vulcan, though. If I wasn't going to come back just as me, it'd be kind of funny.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Were there any funny moments that happened during filming that you'd like to share with us?
I will answer that very quickly from my point of view. No, there were none. That's TNG. That's Voyager. That's not Deep Space Nine. We went to work. We went to work to do our show. We went to work. We had a good time. The frivolity that you see on stage is real. That's what we did. But moments where practical jokes or somebody played something or something, that was never our show. the people would come to visit from the other shows, and then they would leave as quickly as possible.
It was more fun to work on the promenade and in Quark's bar than it was to be on Ops. It was a little more frightening because I had all that techno babble, so it was like the stress of getting it right because every word had to be absolutely right. And
DLP, Lovey.
yeah, dead letter perfect. So it was very challenging, and I would get so nervous I couldn't get my lines out, so it would make me more stressed, and it took me a long time to get over my ego and just put it up on a screen. I made Rene Auberjonois lose his mind a couple of times in the first season, but he wouldn't be direct about it. He would be like, why isn't she writing it down somewhere? And like, I'm not standing right there. And someone would defend me and say, there's nowhere to put it up, Renee. There was nowhere to tape it. It was just, so that didn't really help my level of stress to have someone who sang to me Les Poissons when I first met him, because I loved, Little Mermaid. And so when I first met him, he sang the whole song for me. He didn't care about what joy it was bringing me. It brought him joy to sing it, but it didn't really matter. I was just completely freaked out. And now we're really good friends, but it did get me over trying to memorize the whole thing.
But you were better than Michael.
Yes. But I had more technobabble than Michael, too, didn't I? Like, Marina would be like, what are you complaining about? Come out to dinner with us. I'm like, you don't have to say the lines I have to say. I have to go home and get sleep and learn them. And she watched our show years later, like in the last couple of years, watched it when the Netflix thing happened, and she was like, oh, my God. That was really hard. I'm like, I wasn't kidding. Like,
You were telling the truth.
I was. It would sometimes be a page long.
Well, you were the science officer.
I was a science officer, and sometimes they would change it the morning of, too, which would be like, and then I thought Becker would be easier. No. Comedy is dead letter perfect, too.
Yeah, in front of a live audience, that's incredible.
That was a blessing.
Really?
Yes, because of doing this, I was a little more at ease because I was used to talking to a bunch of people. Well, and so I got better at conventions because of 200 people being out there. And then I did a play when I left Hollywood, and that was easier because of the stage audience and because of coming to conventions. And it was still nerve-wracking. I still lost a lot of sleep before opening nights. Yeah, and they change your lines in the middle of when you're doing it, and
You did. You said you didn't enjoy sitcoms. You did an episode of Seinfeld, didn't you?
Yes.
wow. You running Jerry's Boys?
I was Kramer's caddy,
Oh.
and there are shows you like and there are shows you don't like.
Oh.
I remember randomly seeing that episode, and I go, "Is that Quark?" But you guys were talking about memorizing scripts and how it was very, like pages worth. They didn't let you improvise anything.
Not a word.
It had to be
Christ,
verbatim.
No, it had to be dead letter perfect. We had Judy Brown was our script coordinator, and when the take was over, if we didn't,
We all looked at her.
Yeah, we all looked at her. And if she didn't say, and she wasn't English, but she would say, "DLP, lovey," which meant dead letter perfect, which meant that we could use that
And
take.
then we'd all be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, we did not. We did not improvise. That nothing was improvised. And if you did improvise, unless the director absolutely adored it, it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
And then it'd have to be like a producer director.
Yeah.
And not at 2 a.m.
Yeah, which was easy to make mistakes at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
imagine.
but nobody was awake. They couldn't call anybody. They're not going to call Rick Berman at 2 a.m.
That would have been a fun phone call. Yeah.
Next question.
Thank you. Sorry about
Yeah,
that, but
thank you.
we do get that question often, and it is.
you.
It's not that we're upset about the fact that we didn't have it. It's that we had
It's a
fun.
very serious set.
It was a very serious set.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to briefly mention to Terry how much Dax meant to me
you.
as a queer person growing up. The question is unrelated and for both of you. So are there any guest stars that stand out as being particularly memorable or even a favorite?
Well, it's a hard question for me because most of the Ferengi that I dealt with were guest stars. Aaron was a guest star. Max was a guest star. Wally was a guest star. Oh my God, that's terrible. I've just forgotten her name. Oh my God. No, Adams.
Oh, I'm sorry, it didn't help.
Moogie.
Oh,
Adams. Cecily, thank you. Cecily Adams was a guest star.
And she moody?
She was moody. So all of them were great. There were a lot of wonderful guest stars that I worked with. Yes, all memorable. And the thing about really good guest stars, and we had really good guest stars, because really, our show, unlike perhaps others, if Gul Dukat were just to show up on screen without any words at any point, the audience would understand perfectly what was happening. But Mark was not a series regular. In other words, our guest stars, the people I just mentioned, were as important, almost as important, as any of the people whose names appeared right at the beginning while the music was playing. So there were, and the great thing about great guest stars, makes your work better. You just are inspired by what they're doing, and so you have to come up to their level. And how they did that...
They slept.
They slept,
Seeing us.
okay. But to come onto the strange world that was Deep Space Nine, and to have characters that were as rich as the ones that we had been doing for years, that's a great compliment to them, and made our work better.
I have to agree with you. I can't possibly remember everybody's names. I'm just not good at that anyway. I'm better at faces. And especially because there are people that I worked with that I didn't even know who they were because they were wearing makeup. You know, so you don't see them out of makeup. It's hard to know who they are. But I think part of it is our world was so solid that everybody felt like a regular, every show, right? So I think that's one of the things that's great about watching our show. It's complete. There isn't a fourth wall where you go, I wonder what's in that world over there. It's because it's all so rich and interesting, and there's so many colors happening in the personalities and intrigue and all of these different story arcs and character arcs happening at the same time. So you're watching this richly woven story. You don't feel like anything's missing. So that's where we were super lucky. And the casting by Junie Lowry and Ron Surma, they really made sure that...
we got good actors.
Yeah,
very
we got
good
good
actors.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, so were we. So were the 8 series regulars, or the 9 series regulars.
Yes,
But
we were.
We were
We were
incredibly
solid.
good actors.
100%. 100%.
Despite what everybody says about me.
We love you. We
Thank
love
you.
Armin, Terry, hello.
Hello, Captain Sisko. Yeah, yesterday was, yeah.
Hello, old man.
Hello, Benjamin.
Have to do it.
Hello, Benjamin.
So I know you guys are kind of joking about at the beginning of the panel, but I honestly do believe that Deep Space Nine is the best out of all the Star Treks. And for my personal belief, I always thought it was more about the journey within, about testing the limits of humanity when they're actually faced with something. So with that said, can you guys speak how, through both of your characters, how that developed and molded you, and what were your takeaways from playing Dax and Quark?
Sure. I think so. What was kind of nice is in the beginning, the producers and the writers didn't know what they wanted for my character. They had this really impossible description of a 28-year-old woman with a symbiont who's 350 years old and lived many lifetimes, and a man and a woman, and they just didn't know. So the best thing to do was to have my character trying to understand the symbiont and understand all of these different personalities. And then they wrote to that. There was an episode where, and didn't you play a woman in one? Yeah. And facets? Oh, my word. Well, enjoy that. That would be it.
Soak it in.
But so that's like the whole first season. And there was an episode called Dax, and I got excited when I saw the cover thinking, oh, I'm going to find out about my character. And I don't speak until the very end. That's when this woman was on trial, right? And I was trying to be a gentleman for her. So it was interesting that I got to find out who my character was by people coming on and having an interaction with Curzon or somebody else that my character was at some point. So it was like I got to crawl before I walked, before I ran. But it didn't mean that I didn't have the technobabble, which that was the hardest part. And honestly, if I were a producer, I'd be like, we're hiring people just to help you run lines. That can't be that expensive. You hire people to stand there while
Kitty does that sometimes.
You see?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that hard. But that's what they should have hired for me. Anyway, but then when Michael Dorn's character came on, Michael and I have been friends for years before I got the part. And so when he came on, though, we were like, okay, so if we flirt with each other, do you think they would start to write something for us? And they did. And I thought, wait, did we really win that moment? Or was that planned the whole time? So I don't know if I'm the chicken or the egg. But I think it was really great. And there are many moments where I've watched stuff back because my husband, Adam, was the original director for the documentary. It was going to look very different. And he said, you have to watch a few of these back. You really don't know how good you were in them. And there's one, and thank you, Adam. I know, it was very sweet. And it was good because I hadn't seen it with the perspective. I didn't have the perspective when we first did it. I was too hard on myself. But there were scenes I'd have with Avery where he'd be just like, whoa. That if it was just me, I would probably start crying. But here I am playing Dax, and I'm like formidable with him. And I'm like, right on. I didn't know I was that strong. So, but it's interesting the things. It was just so much growth for me as an actress going through the show, and I think I grew as an actress as they were giving me more to do. I was able to step up to the plate. So they were finding out who I was finding out who Dax was, and by the time I was already kickboxing and Michael came on, Ira wanted to bring some of that into the show. So he was bringing more of me into the show by me doing the fight scenes, and all of that was just who I was and who Kitty was. But yeah, so that was cool. And, you know, it sucks that I died, but it's kind of great that nobody went, yeah, finally she freaking died. You know, everybody's like, oh, no. So that's really sweet. You know what I mean? So there you go.
For me, because when I started work, this is from my point of view. It may or may not be true. It's only from my point of view. So I arrived on the set. The script said that Quark is a finagler. He takes people's money. He's a cheat, that sort of thing. And the makeup itself was, to say the least, humorous. That's the nicest way I can put it. So, and I was dealing not so much with Terry, but with other people who were Starfleet. And I got the sense, again, I make the caveat, this is from my point of view. I got the sense that I was less than, that I was not Starfleet, I was a crook, and I got the sense from many of the actors that I started work with that this is a lesser character, this is not an important character, this is somebody we should look down upon, that sort of thing. And because of the years, because of my own personality, because of all sorts of things, I watched my estimation and my character's estimation grow in esteem with some of the other actors. So it was that in your question, did I see any growth in the character? Yes, I saw it that way. And I also, as I said earlier, although I didn't realize it till the very end of the 7th season, that the character had grown in a way that I, Armin, wasn't aware of until I got to that episode.
Thank you very much.
Next question.
Again, thank both of you for coming. My question is, what was your reaction when they announced they were making a Star Trek Monopoly set, and then it would be framed for the Klingons instead of the Ferengi?
I told you 6 months ago I found out about the pilot. This is the first I've heard about a Monopoly game.
Me too. Are we in it at all? No.
I mean,
You don't know?
That,
You just heard-
there was like a contest to see like which alien race it would be us around, and then like I guess the popular vote was the Klingons.
Oh, that's no surprise.
Yeah, that's no surprise.
No, they're the bullies, right?
Well, they're also aside from the
iconic.
Vulcans, which you have, married into that family.
And I
I
married
think
into the other one too.
that's true. But I think the Klingons are perhaps, besides the Vulcans, are probably the most beloved of the races.
Yeah. Weren't the original villains the
Yeah,
Klingons?
yeah.
They're
So-
the original bad guys.
Michael has one of my favorite lines in all of our shows. There's an episode where you went back in the mini dress when they put our people into the original Star Trek episode.
Yeah, that's such a sexist thing, right? You went back in the mini dress.
You're right. I appreciated it though.
Yes, I bet you did. Especially from your point of view.
From my point, because you were in heels, that's right. But Michael says to I think Andy asks Michael, why did those Klingons look so different than you? And one of the most brilliant lines that our writers ever wrote was Michael going, "We don't like to talk about that." I just adored that. So yes, I can't answer your question because it's the first time I've heard of it.
Next.
Hi, it's a pleasure to have you guys here. I'm a huge fan of DS9, even though it's actually not my favorite series. It's number 2 behind TNG, but hopefully you'll forgive me for that. Anyways.
Hopefully you'll change your mind.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, my question for both you, Terry and Armin, is what were your, if any, reactions or interactions with Gene Roddenberry like? Like, what was he like?
He was gone by the time
I didn't know if you had any or not.
No.
I did have an interaction with Gene Roddenberry. It was brief, it was momentary, but I did have one, and it lives vividly in my mind. It was on my second episode of TNG, and I and 3 others had created this race called the Ferengi. And I was on my way somewhere when this golf cart showed up, probably driven by Arnold. And Roddenberry was in the golf cart, and I was just a piece of meat. He wanted to see what the makeup looked like, what the costume looked like. I don't think he addressed me at all. I owe a great deal to him, and so I didn't. At this point, I don't mind, and I'm grateful for the fact I even got that. So I was just simply an actor standing there in makeup, standing there in costume, as he checked me out to see what his designers had done. But that said, one of the kindest, and maybe one of the reasons that so many of the Star Trek actors feel like family to each other was that his wife, Majel Roddenberry, almost many times during the course of the years when we were working, would hold parties, bring us all out to the house, and where we could all bond even further. So it was not just the people on our show, but the people on other shows as well. So briefly with Gene Roddenberry himself, but many, many, many times with Majel, who was just delicious. She was terrific.
We have about 3 minutes left, so we might be able to power through the rest of these questions here if we try really hard.
All right. Hey, thank you guys for coming. DS9 is my favorite of the Star Trek series. I consider it.
Perhaps
to be,
you'll change your mind.
If you say so. This question is more directed towards Terry. There's sort of the phenomenon that a lot of people have recognized over the years on the Star Trek series with characters like Deanna Troi and 7 of 9 and even Major Kira, the catsuit phenomenon, where a lot of the women stars of Star Trek are not put in the uniform that they should be in, like that Star Trek uniform with the jacket and everything. Like Deanna Troi is like an officer, and most of the time she's wearing like this catsuit.
Right, and all three of them, in all fairness to me, are wearing 5-inch heels.
Yeah.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting that
Top of the catsuit.
the character of Jadzia Dax is, like, compared to some of those others, is so much more flirtatious and forward. And yet Jadzia is much more often than others, she's still put in her uniform. And I just wondered if you wanted to talk about that, if you had any idea of why.
I think a lot of it is because I'm 6 feet tall. I mean, if I were 5'3" and I had on heels, I mean, notice Nana's heels get bigger and bigger. The more scenes I do with her, the higher her shoes get.
Nana is shorter than I am.
Yeah, she didn't like doing the walk and talks and being shorter than me. We've evolved into being absolute best friend girlfriends right now in our lives. We live a mile away from each other. Not purposeful, it just happened that way. When I moved back to LA, 6 weeks later, she moved back to LA. See, copying me. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that really probably worked into it when you think about it. Like, just as an example, I stood very erect. Part of it was just it was military, but part of it was because my spots were painted on originally with watercolor, I couldn't move my neck or they would get blurry and it would look bad in close-ups, and then they'd have to take it off and redo it, and it was a big drama. And they couldn't put base on and repaint it because it was watercolor. And we're Los Angeles, so it's very hot. Everybody's sweating. So the first 3 years, I had a fan that was a stand-up fan that was just mine to cool me off. But so that's partly why I was very rigid in my movement. My hands behind my back, I just got lucky in the first group scene. I put my hands behind my back first. It was like, ha. Now you can't. And Sid was like, now what am I going to do? So he crossed his arms. I mean, seriously, it was like, and then we all kind of favored that thing, and it became my thing. So it's sort of the same thing. If I weren't 6 feet tall, I'd probably be wearing heels. Denise is tall, but she's not as tall as I am. I don't know that she wore heels, did she? Denise? I think we were both like the really strong characters that came off more maybe physically appropriate to how you think of an officer. Is that probably a good way of putting it? Not more masculine, just more, like it'd be so weird if one of these police officers had high heels on and they were running after a bad guy. I'd be like, what? That's unsafe, right? So, yeah, I think I just got lucky.
And if I may add to that, I know it's your question, but Star Trek, as Terry alluded to earlier, was always a boys' club. So Berman and company made sure that the women were attractive to men, and not just the people, but the costumes themselves were to be enormously flattering in that way. Flattering is the wrong word. It's the nicest word I can come up with. So that the women's assets were pronounced.
Whether they were covered up or not. I mean, because like even what you're saying, piece of meat, I lived the piece of meat thing, having to go up there and decide how big the padding was in my breast. I mean, that's what he was not good. So anyway, yeah.